Imagine this. A delivery guy walks into a business, just doing his job, but the employees decide to mock him. They make rude comments, laugh behind his back, and think they're untouchable. Little do they know, the person they've been laughing at is not just any delivery guy. He's the owner of the company they work for. In a cruel twist of fate, they have no idea what's coming. As the mocking continues, the tension builds, and everything they think they know about their boss is about to shatter. It's a moment that will make you rethink how we treat people, and how one small decision can change everything. What happens next is shocking, and these employees will soon learn that their actions have consequences far beyond what they ever imagined. Stick around to find out how they face the truth and the intense regret that follows. The delivery guy, let's call him Mark, had been making regular stops at this office for weeks now. He'd always been polite, professional, and kept to himself. But today felt different. As Mark entered the building with a few packages in hand, he noticed the employees whispering and laughing among themselves. At first, he thought nothing of it. Maybe they were joking about something unrelated. But as he passed by their desks, the snickers grew louder, the whispers more pointed. They were making fun of his appearance, his uniform, the way he spoke. Mark kept his head down, pretending he didn't hear, but deep down, he felt the sting. He knew exactly what was happening, but he had to keep moving. He couldn't afford to lose his cool. After all, he was just the delivery guy, or so they thought. Little did they know, Mark's company was a lot more than they realized, and this day would be the last time they underestimated him. As Mark walked toward the front desk, the laughter from the employees became harder to ignore. A few of them whispered louder than the others, making sure he could hear. "Did you see the way he's dressed? Like he's still stuck in the 90s, one of them mocked. Another chimed in, "Wonder if he even knows how to use a smartphone. Probably thinks we're all rich for no reason." The comments stung more than Mark let on, but he didn't react. He knew better than to get into it. Meanwhile, across the room, two of the senior employees, Mike and Sarah, exchanged smug looks. They'd worked in the office for years, and in their minds, they were untouchable. They thought they were above people like Mark, people they saw as just delivery guys or service workers. Mike leaned back in his chair and muttered, "Can you imagine the kind of people who own businesses like this? Probably never even worked a real day in their life." What they didn't know was that Mark had built the business from the ground up. He had sacrificed years of his life to create something successful, something that had grown far beyond their comprehension. Mark had once been exactly where they were, working his way up, dealing with customers, taking odd jobs just to pay the bills. But now, as the owner of the company they all worked for, he had the power to shape everything. The thought of them laughing at him made him question whether they were truly the right people to help him take the business to the next level. Mark's mind raced as he handed the receptionist the packages. His heart was pounding, but he remained calm, his expression unreadable. All he had to do was finish this delivery and get out of there. But part of him couldn't help but wonder, how much longer would he let these people walk all over him? The power dynamics of the office were shifting, and Mark wasn't sure if he should just confront them now or let things play out. Either way, something was about to change. But what? Would he confront them with the truth or let the situation play out on its own? The tension was thick, and Mark couldn't shake the feeling that the moment to act was coming soon. As Mark left the office, he couldn't shake the feeling that something needed to change. The laughter still echoed in his ears as he stepped into the elevator. For a moment, he considered just letting it go, walking away without making a scene. But deep down, he knew it wouldn't feel right. Not after everything he had built. The more he thought about the way they treated him, the more his frustration grew. Back at the office, Mike and Sarah were already talking about their plans for the weekend, completely unaware of the storm brewing just beneath the surface. They continued to throw casual insults Mark's way, thinking the joke was harmless. "He probably still lives in a tiny apartment, huh?" Mike said with a smirk. Sarah laughed. "Bet he doesn't even know how to sign into Zoom." Can you imagine? Meanwhile, Mark was in his car, hands gripping the steering wheel tighter with every passing second. He knew he couldn't let this slide anymore. He had to confront them. The phone call came just as Mark was pulling into the parking lot. It was his assistant, and her voice was shaky. "Mark, you need to get back here. There's something you need to see." Her words felt like a punch in the gut. And without asking any more questions, Mark turned the car around. By the time he walked back through the office doors, the air felt different, thick with anticipation. The employees had no idea what was about to hit them. Mike and Sarah were standing near the break room, laughing like nothing had happened, their conversations still about anything but work. Mark paused in the doorway for a moment, his presence barely noticeable at first. But when they saw him, their faces froze. Mike was the first to speak, still clueless. "Hey, Mark, you back for another delivery?" he said, a smug grin on his face. Sarah nudged him, but both of them seemed oddly calm. Then Mark took a deep breath, and in that moment, everything shifted. "I'm not here to deliver packages today," he said, his voice steady. But the weight of his words sent a ripple of tension through the room. The silence that followed felt deafening. The smile slowly faded from Mike's face. Sarah's eyes flickered nervously, her fingers nervously twisting a pen. Mark took another step forward, his eyes locked onto theirs. "I'm the one who owns this place, and you've been mocking me all along." The words hung in the air, thick with the reality they hadn't seen coming. The silence in the room was almost suffocating. Mike and Sarah exchanged uneasy glances, both struggling to process what For a moment, Mark felt a wave of relief wash over him. The truth was out, and the power dynamics were shifting. The employees who had ridiculed him were facing the consequences, and those who had been watching silently, the new hires, were seeing that their actions had weight. But just when it seemed like the conflict had reached its resolution, a second, more unexpected twist took place. As Mark turned to address the group, the office door creaked open again. This time, it wasn't another employee. It was a man in a sharp suit, a briefcase in hand, and an air of authority about him. Mark froze as the man approached, his eyes scanning the room. "Is there a problem here?" the stranger asked, his voice cool and measured. Everyone in the room turned to look at him, but it was Mark who answered. "Who are you?" he asked, his confusion evident. The man smiled faintly, setting down his briefcase on the table. "You don't recognize me, do you? I'm here because of your recent decision to hire Alex as head of operations." You see, Mark, it's not just about employee behavior. It's about running the company in a way that aligns with our long-term goals. He paused, letting his words sink in. "And that's why I'm here, to take over." A stunned silence filled the room. Alexa's eyes narrowed as she exchanged an uneasy glance with Mark. The man continued, "It seems your company has grown, but you've become too attached to the day-to-day operations. I'll be taking over the leadership role from here. This is my company now." Mark's heart sank. He had fought for respect, fought for his place at the top, and now, with a single sentence, everything was in jeopardy. It was clear the man wasn't just an outsider. He had been watching, waiting for the right moment to make his move. The room erupted into whispers as Mark's world seemed to crumble around him. Alex stood frozen, clearly not expecting this. And as Mark turned to face the man who had just upended everything he had built, A part of him knew that the fight for control over his own business wasn't over. It had just begun. Mark stood frozen, the weight of the man's words sinking in. But as he looked around at the employees, at the new hires, at Mike and Sarah, still